1490 WGCH. This is Kerry Lutz. You're listening to the Financial Survival Network. And I've got a special guest on now. He is one of the top freedom bloggers out there. I've been going to his site for a while. I found him because he was posting all of my audio segments, and I had to find this person and see what he was all about. And what I found is a blog that is just a great source for finding out what's really going on in the world. And he goes by the name of BrotherJohnF.com. We'll just call him John on the show. John, welcome to the Financial Survival Network. It's great to have you on.
Thanks, Kerry. It's great to be with you.
You've got a blog. You got thousands of people coming to it a day. We don't have to give out the statistics. Trust me, it's substantial. You have, in a way, realized the American dream. If you build it, they will come. You built the site. You've got people that really keep going back to your site constantly, continuously throughout the day. What got you started on this, John?
Well, I got started initially a long time ago. I had been shown by my parents and grandparents the value of silver and gold, and I was always a coin collector as a kid. And then just fairly recently, in the 2000s, I started getting very interested in the silver and gold markets, and I started to see the economic reality of what we were facing. And so I started to investigate and research it, and I came to the conclusion that silver was tremendously undervalued, and that it was, after reading people like Ted Butler and others, came to the conclusion that it was actually being suppressed in price for various reasons. And so in December of 2010, I started my YouTube channel, and then I branched out from a blog to a blog from there.
And so you've got the precious metals background, but you also know what's going on politically and economically, that nothing good's going on, basically, right? I mean, we're heading down a path that it's going to be extremely difficult to turn back from. So you got the idea for the blog. What happened then?
Well, I wanted to get the word out. I've done about 250 or so YouTube videos, and there's some others out there doing them, Chris Duane and Sean from SGT Report.
Sure.
And of course, there's the stalwarts like David Morgan and others. But I really felt that the silver story had not been told completely, and I cover Bixware as well, who has an interesting twist on it.
Oh, yes, we know about Bix, and I've interviewed him a number of times. Like the guy, don't agree with necessarily that we're on this road to Ruta, but I like his twist, and he's got a sense of humor, right?
Yeah, he's great. So I cover his stuff, but the main thing was I wanted to really, the idea behind Silver for the People is it's based on the idea that, well, I'll briefly go into, I'm sure you're familiar with L. Frank Baum's The Wizard of Oz.
Oh, of course. Follow the Yellow Brick Road, which got changed, and all that, and it was about the Federal Reserve, to make a long story short, right?
Right, and if you remember the slippers that Dorothy originally wore, they were silver slippers.
Correct. Yes.
And it's kind of an interesting twist that this was one of the first movies that was Technicolor, and they changed that for they made him ruby for that reason. But it's kind of interesting that was near the point in time when silver had to be demonetized to become an industrial commodity, because silver, of course, is the most reflective, the most conductive, the most of anti-biocide, etc., various things that silver possesses as a unique element, but it was also money. So there was a crisis of how to change that. And so the theme of The Wizard of Oz is that Dorothy had the power, of course, the Tin Man representing the industrialists and the Scarecrow representing the farmers, and the Cowardly Lion being William Jennings Bryan. But they're on this journey, and they come and find this wizard who is the banks controlling gold and the gold standard. But Dorothy finds out that the power to return to a sound system, which is her silver slippers, to go back to Kansas, she's actually had with her the whole time. So that's kind of the principle behind the blog, that when you examine silver and examine the fundamentals and you look at how much stacking it would take to turn things around, it really is within the power of the people to change this thing.
Right. And silver is a unique metal, and one thing we don't talk about anymore, and when you were going over the uses, it just occurred to me, is we used to get silver fillings. Now, what happened? All of a sudden, silver amalgam fillings used for 100 years are no good for you. We need these plastic fillings. And by the way, get those silver fillings taken out. Is that, I mean, I don't like to be a conspiracy nut job, because God knows there's enough of them around. But when you think of how many tons of silver were used for dental work, it makes you wonder, doesn't it?
Well, it's been used for a lot of things, and it's always going to have to be used for a lot of things. And that was another thing I wanted to point out, is that a lot of people aren't aware of the fact that they talk about how much silver is left and we're running out of silver and how much gold is left, etc. But really, there's the same amount of silver that there's always been. There's only so much silver on the earth and gold on the earth. And it's really not a matter of it running out. It's simply a matter of where it's located. Now, the vast majority is ending up being located now in landfills, and that's because the price isn't high enough.
Mm-hmm. Right, because scrapping it, there's not enough incentive to cash in on the scrap market effectively. Although for things like x-rays, my doctor is telling me you come across these large caches of x-rays and they pay you like a couple $100 a pound for, old x-rays, which if you can find them, is definitely, I don't want to say there's gold in that film, there's silver in that film. And, you're right that the silver, it's used in minute quantities in your iPhone, in your computer, in your keyboard. It's so conductive that there's really not a lot of substitutes for it, is there?
That's correct. In that use, gold is actually used. If you look in your computer, your network interface card and the contacts have gold on them, and that gold that's used there is recycled. And that's the thing about gold, is that we still have all the gold that we've ever had. My estimate is roughly 10 billion ounces. I think the silver that's available for delivery now is probably a tenth of that. So my guess would be above ground silver is probably a tenth of above ground gold, but I can't say for sure.
Right. So obviously silver is dramatically underpriced and undervalued, especially when you compare it to the price of gold then, right?
Absolutely. And if you examine the statistics and the studies that Ted Butler and others have done, it's quite clear that there is a cartel that is suppressing the price of silver. And it's my contention that actually, if you look up at the top of my blog and my YouTube channel, it's Silver for the People, and that silver is the stake that slays the financial vampires. It's the bullet that slays the Wall Street werewolves. Mm-hmm. And it's my contention that they are actually more afraid of silver than anything, because it's the people's money. And by the way, silver, the word silver means money in 14 to 60 different languages. I'm not sure which. But it's always been the people's money. So gold was the money of kings, etc. It was not the money of commerce. Silver was the money of commerce. So silver is actually the main target of whatever you want to call them, the banksters or the people that are trying to manipulate money to impoverish the people and enrich themselves.
Right. And yeah, you see this. And today was a momentous occasion, because my oldest, dearest friend, who I've been telling to buy gold and silver since 2008, bought his first silver today. And, once you start buying it, then the reality kind of dawns on you that, this is what money is, not what we've been led to believe. And each person that buys it, that's one less mind that's part of the mass consciousness.
Yeah, and that's money has different definition or different aspects to it. currently, money is one of the aspects is that is a medium of exchange. Now, currently, gold and silver really aren't being used as a medium of exchange, but another aspect of money is that it preserves wealth. It's a store of wealth. Mm-hmm. So silver and gold are beginning to operate in that way as people begin to empower themselves by taking delivery of physical gold and silver. They're recognizing that paper money hidden in the mattress is just going to get worth less every day.
Yeah, every day it's worth less and less and worth less and less until it becomes worth less. And that's what's going to happen. I mean, this has been done before, John, like so many times throughout history. Debasement of currency, it goes back to the Bible, money failing. In China, they invented paper money. Marco Polo was there and watched. At first, he thought paper money is brilliant because you always have enough of it. There's never a shortage. Then he watched their equivalent of hyperinflation, and the Chinese called it flying money because no sooner would they get it in their hands than it would fly out. And that's what we're going to be seeing, flying money, except we're going to see digital dollars that are just going to be – they're in this death spiral now. I don't see how they stop it. The only thing that I can see them doing is some type of Bretton Woods agreement where all the debt gets forgiven. And once you get into that, then we're back in like big biblical times again. And I'm not a real religious person, but I do believe in the grand jubilee and the jubilee where they freed the people from prison, released the slaves and forgave the debt, because there's an inevitability about debt that it always winds up in the same place, like humanity.
Well, that's interesting that you mentioned that. Mine is not a Christian blog, but I come from a Christian perspective. But you mentioned the topic in the Bible, and people say, well, it's not really addressed in the Bible. Actually, it's addressed a lot. And the reason why people don't understand it is that the term that's used is dishonest weights and measures. Now, most people don't understand that that's actually talking about money, because at that time, they weighed out the silver, they weighed out the gold to determine the value of it, and that's how they made purchases. So what is actually being condemned is the shaving of coins, rigging of weights, which is really, we're seeing that counterpart in the paper money system as the Fed counterfeits the currency, and even with the bond market now we have failure to deliver of bonds, and there's counterfeiting going on all over the place.
Mm-hmm. And there's I don't want to become a Bible scholar here, but, it's ingrained in our, it's in our DNA. And there's a reference in Genesis 47:15 to Egypt when money failed in the land of Egypt. And, it basically was a total upheaval, because why does money fail? It's not because gold and silver become worth less. It's because the currency, whatever it is, suffers debasement, and then it fails, right? I mean, that's the way it works.
Well, I mean, the idea behind an independent central bank was that they would be truly independent and that they would not fall to the will of the politicians who would require them to print money. Now, in some cases that worked for a while, but the pressure that comes from once politicians have the ability to take money from one person and to give it to another, you kind of let the cat out of the bag at that point, because you always have an incentive to take and spend more money.
Yeah. And to pick winners and losers, and to reward your friends and punish your enemies. And that's what your site and your YouTube channel are all about, fighting. So where do we find you again, John?
You can find me at BrotherJohnF.com, BrotherJohnF on YouTube, or if you just want to find it on Google, you can just type in Silver for the People, and the first two sites that you'll find are the blog and the YouTube.
All right. Hey, it's been a pleasure having you on. We will touch back with you, especially as the price of silver continues its inevitable and inexorable rise upward. And we wish you the best on your endeavors.